Bushfires in Queensland and New South Wales dominated news last week. Much of the media were quick to amplify claims that climate change was at play here. Now, here's retired New South Wales Fire Commissioner and former New South Wales Climate Change Councillor Greg Mullins on regional ABC radio.
There's fires breaking out in places where they just shouldn't burn. The west coast of Tasmania, the World Heritage Areas, wet rainforest, subtropical rainforest, it's all burning. And look, this is driven by climate change. There's no other explanation.
Well, he is an expert, he's worth reporting, but shouldn't such claims be tested? He cited places burning that shouldn't burn, such as Siberia, where other sources confirm that bushfires happen there every summer. And Mullins, of course, as you heard, mentioned the west coast of Tasmania. We saw fires there earlier this year, and on this program we exposed emotive reporting suggesting this was unprecedented. It wasn't, of course. This report, for instance, in the South Australian Chronicle of February 1915, reported lives lost and the most devastating bushfires ever known in Tasmania, sweeping over the north-west coast and other districts. The extent of the devastation cannot be overestimated, it said. And as for Mullins' claims on rainforests, the rainforests of the west coast, there was this report in 1982 from the Canberra Times detailing a huge forest fire burning out 75,000 hectares of dense rainforest. Nine newspapers' Jane Caro tweeted her surprise at the fires. So there are bushfires all the way up the New South Wales and Queensland coasts and no rain forecast for 6 to 8 weeks in September, she exclaimed, saying this was with 1 degree of warming, and she was spruiking the climate action strike this Friday. Yep, that strike will do it. It'll stop the fires. Back in the 1940s, there were September days in Brisbane of 90 degrees and more Fahrenheit, or over 32 degrees Celsius. Now, sure, last week's conditions were horrid and they are not the norm, but they're not unprecedented. Drought, dry winters, hot springs, we get them. They might fit into a global warming narrative and they might not. The best thing to do last week, surely, was to concentrate on fighting the fires. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott did that. I don't know about the social media alarmists. Channel 10 news reporter Alex Bruce Smith, that is, she wrote that the fires were unprecedented. There's no beating around the bush, she said. Climate change is helping to drive the catastrophe we are currently seeing. It's the worst start to a Queensland bushfire season on record. But is it? To be fair to the journalist, this stuff was being put out there by people in authority.
It is an historic event. We've never seen fire danger indices, fire danger ratings at this time of the year as we're seeing now. I've never seen this before in recorded history. Fire weather has never been as severe this early in spring.
Never before in recorded history? The Chronicle, in the late winter of 1946, August the 22nd it was, noted that from Bundaberg to the New South Wales border, hundreds of square miles of drought-stricken southeastern Queensland were aflame. And 2 years later, the Central Queensland Herald on the 30th of September 1948 reported an 800-mile chain of bushfires fed by dry grass stretched tonight along the Queensland coast from Cairns to Maryborough. Both these easily retrievable examples put the claims of worst ever and unprecedented into perspective, if not in the shade. Perhaps the media ought to be a bit more careful about such descriptors, or check them, or try from some perspective now and then, rather than just going along with the zeitgeist. Last week, The Guardian linked bushfires in Queensland's rainforest to global warming. I never thought I'd see the Australian rainforest burning. What will it take for us to wake up to the climate crisis? That was the frightening stuff written by Dr. Jolie Jurgis of the ANU's Climate Change Institute and a former member, and a member of the Climate Council. She went on, despite being ridiculously busy, this was on Twitter, I couldn't turn down this opportunity to share my thoughts on the current bushfires. As a scientist, what I find particularly disturbing about the current conditions is that World Heritage rainforest areas such as the Lamington National Park in the Gold Coast hinterland are now burning, she wrote. Well, we were busy too, but we were able to dig this out. It's the Cairns Post from the 25th of October 1951. A bushfire in Lamington National Park today swept through a grove of 3,000-year-old macrozamia palms. These trees were once the features of the park. The fire has burnt out about 2,000 acres of thick rainforest country. That's right, nearly 70 years ago, rainforest burning in Lamington National Park before global warming. Journalists were quick to share the alarmist views, of course. Hey, it's easier than checking them. Seemingly forgotten in the rush to fit up climate change as the cause of these fires was one highly relevant fact. Arsonists were responsible for many, if not most, of the blazes. As news.com.au reported last Wednesday, detectives have already established that 10 fires in Brisbane, Stanthorpe, the South East and Central Queensland regions were deliberately lit. 8 of those were set by juveniles. Unless climate change is changing juvenile behaviour, it is hard to overlook crucial facts such as how the fires actually started.